Welcome everyone to The Great Sources, Season 2, Episode 13. Today's shir is called Exilic Times. When do we not belong in Eretz Yisrael? May the shir be a schus for Achenu b'nei Yisrael in Eretz Yisrael, in their Eis Tzara. Hashem yivorech es amoy b'sholem. Last week's shir we explained that the mechloek is between the Chachmei Bavel, who stayed behind in Bavel when the Beis Hamikdash was being rebuilt, and those that were opposed to that stance, which we find Rabbi Yochanan, Resh Lakish, and others. The machlokes is about whether the point that made the Bayis Sheni special, which is specifically called the Sod HaTorah in the Heichalis, which is the great explosion of Torah, or the cause for the great explosion of Torah that happened in the Tkufa of Bayis Sheni. So they had a machlokes. There was a question whether that is going to be beneficial. Is that going to help the Torah learning in Bavel too? Or will that be limited to Eretz Yisrael? So that's what made the Bayis Sheni important. That's what made it appropriate even to have a Bayis Sheni. And the question is that something that's going to be centralized in Eretz Yisrael but spread to Chutz La'aretz too, in which case they should dafka stay behind because they'll be in peace, as we discussed last year and 2 shurim ago? Or will the Sod HaTorah only work in Eretz Yisrael, and therefore everyone should belongs in Eretz Yisrael during Bayis Sheni, with the Mikdash where the Sod HaTorah is centralized? Now, today what we're going to explore is something really interesting, which is that those who held that the Bavliim should have returned after 70 years of Golas Bavel, along with Ezra, don't merely hold that the Bavliim once upon a time sinned, a long, long time ago, sinned by not returning. Rather, those who held, the Amoraim that held that the Bavliim should have come back, and not just Amoraim, Tanoim too, as we shall see. Those that held that the Bavliim were all supposed to return with Ezra after 70 years of Golas Bavel, they kept a hatred towards the Bavliim for that, and they hold that the Bavliim should not come afterwards. Meaning, there's the Tkufa that the Bavliim were supposed to come, according to these sheets. The Bavliim, everyone from Bavel should have returned along with Ezra, or perhaps sometime over the period of Bayis Sheni. Once they missed that window of opportunity, the Pekida, when they're being invited to come back to Eretz Yisrael, as we shall see, these sheets hold, you messed up, the Bavliim, you had your chance to come, and you declined, which is a terrible sin, and now you're no longer welcome in Eretz Yisrael. That's what we're going to show. So what we're exploring today is, from what I can see, the only source in Chazal. It's not just one source, a few sources, but it's all about the same thing. The only place in Chazal where we find a concept that there sometimes we can judge that we do not belong in Eretz Yisrael. So this is a very important question. When is it that we don't belong in Eretz Yisrael, and why? And of course, where does that leave us today? That's the ultimate question. So first what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring you through the Mekairis for this hatred to the Bavli, and I'm going to show you that, like I said, it's not merely that people believe that they did a tremendous hate by not coming in Bayis Sheni, but they actually consider this hate to have long-lasting ramifications. And in fact, the Bavliim were not welcome in Eretz Yisrael. So what are the sources? So the one which we spoke about much, and we're going to go through the source sheet here in order. Number one, we have the story in Yuma Daf Testament Beis, where Resh Lakish was swimming in the Yarden River on the border of Eretz Yisrael. Along comes Rabbi Bachano, who was apparently a Bavli, right? See from this Gemara, okay? Rabbi Bachano was a Bavli, and he extended a hand to Resh Lakish. Resh Lakish, instead of thanking him and taking his hand, he said, "By God, or God, I hate you. We hate you." The Bavliim hate you. Why? I'm sorry, the Eretz Yisrael hate you, Babylonian, because you should have all returned. b'mei Esra. And the pasuk in Shir Hashirim that says, I'm being marach about this even though we know this Gemara because we're going to deal with this a lot today. The pasuk in Shir Hashirim that says about the Isha in Shir Hashirim, is she a chayma or is she not a chayma? This is the major test at the end of Shir Hashirim. Is the Isha a chayma or not? Means, according to Rish Lakish, is Bnei Yisrael a chayma? Is Knesset Yisrael a chayma? Meaning, will they, at the end of 70 years of Galus, will they come back kachayma, all together, like a wall, or not? And you guys didn't, and because you didn't, the Shechina wasn't sharing by a sheni. It's all your fault, and Rish Lakish now is being, he's not being welcoming to Rabbi Bachana, and he's not being friendly to Rabbi Bachana. He comes to Rabbi Yochanan, who tells him that actually Rabbi Yochanan says no, the Shechina wouldn't have been sharing by a sheni regardless, even if all the Bavlim would have returned, because the Shechina was built by the Persians. Now, that's one makar for Bavli hatred. Another one is in the Medrash Yashirim Rabbah, which goes like this. And interestingly, you'll see from this Medrash, you see how much you have to medayik and how seriously the Amoraim were about the specific attitudes that they had. The Medrash goes like this. Rav Shlokish, when he would see the Bavliim gathering in the Shuk, and this is, by the way, in Eretz Yisrael, which is important, that's where Rav Shlokish lived, he would tell them like this. He would tell them, scatter yourselves. Badru Gamecha, I want you to scatter, because when you were supposed to come up, you weren't chayma, you weren't together, unified. And now all of a sudden you want to make yourself a chayma? Not masculine. Okay. Rabbi Yochanan, when he would see them, he would be mekanter them. He would berate them, chide them. And he said like this. He said, the Navi is mekanter them, because the pasuk says, Yimasem Elokai ki l'sham uloi. Pasuk in Hosea says, Yimasem Elokai ki l'sham uloi v'yihu noidim b'goyim. God rejects them because they didn't listen to him, and now they have to wander among the nations. So Rish Lakish says, look, Rabbi Yochanan says, the Navi is mekanter them, v'ano loy mekanter lohim. So I should also be mekanter them. I see the Navi treats them a certain way, those who didn't hear God, meaning they didn't hear his call inviting them to return. And therefore, says Rabbi Yochanan, I will do the same as the Navi. Okay? So why is it so interesting? Because Rish Lakish, who says im chaymahi, means would they all be a chayma and come together? And that's the test of Bnei Yisrael, and that's the test of the Bnei Yisrael in Golus. And they didn't pass the test; they weren't kechayma. So Rish Lakish's hatred to the Bavlim was expressed in the following specific behavior: that when he would see them being kechayma, see them being together, he would tell them, "Guys, come on, you're supposed to be kechayma 400 years ago, 500 years ago, when we were supposed to come back from Eretz Yisrael, and now you're kechayma. This is your problem." Rabbi Yochanan, as we said, does not believe that Imchayma means if you would all come back, the Shechina would return. Because Rabbi Yochanan says even if they come back, Shechina won't return. So what does Imchayma mean according to Rabbi Yochanan? Actually, we'll see today. But the point is that's why his expression of hatred to the Bavlim wasn't based on the fact that they were getting together. So Shlakish L'Shitase. Rabbi Yochanan has no Chayma issue with the Bavlim. His issue with the Bavlim is L'Shamu, they didn't listen to Hashem. And he says, look, well, the Navi rejects them and berates them, so I will do the same. That's a Rabbi Yochanan. Okay, so that's another Bavli hatred, and here's another source of Bavli hatred is also in that Medrash in Shir Hashirim, great story, that, it starts from Chayma, had they all come back, the Beis HaMikdash wouldn't have been destroyed. Reb Zera, we know about Reb Zera. Reb Zera was the one who was avoiding Reb Yehuda, because Reb Zera wanted to go back from Babylon to Yisrael, and Reb Yehuda held you can't. Now, Reb Zera did end up going, and when he got there, says the Medrash, when he got to Eretz Yisrael, so he went out to the shuk to buy something, and he told the person who was weighing the I think it's grain, I think they say it means some grains of produce. He told the person that was weighing it, weigh it well. And the person said to him, get out of here, you Bavli, who your forefathers destroyed the Mikdash, caused the Beis HaMikdash to be destroyed, the second Beis HaMikdash. Get out of here, you Bavli. So Reb Zera said, what do you mean? Why is he saying this? Are my forefathers not like his fathers? He went to the Beis Medrash and he heard this teaching from Reb Shelo. Im Chaymahi, had Bnei Yisrael come kachayma from Galus, the second Mikdash would never have been destroyed. And so Reb Zera said, Yafalim Dani Am Haaretz. The Am Haaretz was right. He taught me a good lesson. So basically, Reb Zera goes into the shop And this Amoritz is like, you Bavli, get out of here, you Bavli, don't tell me what to do, Bavli. And Reb Zeir is wondering, what is this hatred against Bavli? And then he hears a shear from Shela that it's the Bavliim's fault that the second Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, and he says, oh, now I get what that Amoritz was teaching me. Okay, and then we have the other sources. If you're going through the source sheet, we have the other sources, 4, 5, and 6. The Mishnayos twice attribute a certain practice to Bavliim, and the Gemara says in both of those places, actually not the Bavliim who had this practice, it's actually Alexandrium, but the Mishnah uses this derogatory term Bavli because they hated Bavliim, so Bavli meant a bad guy. And Taisus explains why they hate the Bavliim, because le'olu b'mei Ezra. Taisus menach staf kof. It's not stam hatred. Okay, so now let's analyze this hatred. Think about this. We're talking about Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish 500 years after Ezra came back. So why are they keeping this attitude towards Bavliim? Because their distant ancestors didn't come to Eretz Yisrael. And in fact, think about it even deeper. Look, Rabbi Bachana is at the Yarden. Rish Lakish would see people in Eretz Yisrael. Rabbi Yochanan lived in Eretz Yisrael. He would see Bavliim in Eretz Yisrael. And so these people are actually coming to Eretz Yisrael. So why is he hating on them now? What does he have against them? What does he have against them? They're coming to Eretz Yisrael. Okay, their forefathers should have come 500 years ago. They didn't say that. But now these guys are coming. You're hating them because of a sin of their fathers, which they are actually rectifying. But clearly, there's some rejection of Bavliim, which is expressed in the story by the Amoritz, who says, get out of here, Bavli. That's what he told him. Get out of here. Why don't you get out of here? We don't need Bavliim here. Right? Because Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish, they treated Bavliim a certain way when they saw them in Eretz Yisrael. So essentially, it's this like a tribal hatred against Bavli people because of something that they did 500 years ago, and they're not welcome anymore. And the truth is, I think this is pretty clear in the Medrash, because this is, go back to number 2 in the source sheet, where after it says about, Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish would chap the Bavliim, berate the Bavliim, they saw in Eretz Yisrael. The Medrash continues. Rabbi Kana said, if you see the Eretz Yisrael full of Bavliim, tzapei l'raglim Mashiach. If you see the benches of Eretz Yisrael full of Bavliim, you can hope for the Raglim Mashiach. You can assume Mashiach's around the corner. Because what it's saying is that Bavliim, in Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish's opinion, actually don't belong in Eretz Yisrael. They don't belong there. They have a hatred to the Bavliim, that the Bavliim are outsiders and don't belong. And Rabbi Kana is saying is when that changes, that means Mashiach's coming. Okay, and he actually quotes a pasuk, Paras Veshes Ragla, we'll get back to that later. Paras Veshes Ragla, we'll get back to that later. So basically, it's not just that an opinion about, okay, there's a lot of people who did Averis, right? A lot of generations did Averis. We don't hate all their descendants. This is apparently more than just a question of whether at a certain point in time a certain community did Averis. This became somehow, for some reason, this split in Klal Yisrael, that there's the Bavliim who are bad and actually don't belong in Eretz Yisrael. Don't belong in Eretz Yisrael, because instead of Rish Lakish welcoming him, instead of Yochanan welcoming him, instead of the Amoritz welcoming Reb Zeir, they're basically telling them, get out of here. So basically the question is, why should Bavliim not come to Eretz Yisrael? Okay, they did something wrong. Okay, they should have come at the Yisrael when there was a Pekida, and Ezra came back. It was a wonderful time to come, build the Beis HaMikdash, etc. Why does that mean that 500 years later, the great-great-great-grandchildren are not welcome in Eretz Yisrael? So now, maybe you'll say, because there's something to do in Chutz La'aretz. Chutz La'aretz is also important. Like the Gemara says in Psachim, that there's a reason why Yisrael is in exile being the Umis, which is in order to bring Gerim. So maybe the Bavliim are supposed to be in Golus to make Gerim. So the truth is, this doesn't work at all, obviously, and I'll show you why, just to make it clear. First of all, they weren't just telling them that you have a mission in Chutz La'aretz. Like the Satmar Rav says, there's reasons to be in Chutz La'aretz. It was a sinner. There was a sinner to the Bavliim. Understand? Think about this, okay? It's a sinner recorded in Mishnayos. This is a halachic sinner. This is not stam tribalism. This is a halacha. So it's not merely that they held that there's something for them to do in Chutz La'aretz. Additionally, if the issue is people have to be in Chutz La'aretz because it's a job to do in Chutz La'aretz, what does it have to do with the Bavlium? Why does the Bavlium have to be in Chutz La'aretz? And all more than that, these shittas hold that the Bavlium actually should have all returned when the Bayis Sheni was being built, which means that the mission of being a Chutz La'aretz to make Gerim is done, right? Because everyone should have come back. What about the Gerim? Elamai, it's done. And I want to show you that it's actually the case, which is like this. If you look at the source sheet, this is number 8, a very, very important medrash. I think we're going to go into this more in another shir, even deeper. The medrash goes like this. So it starts off on the pasuk, Rani v'simchi bas Tzion kinedi ba v'shachanti v'soichech. That's the prediction of Zechariah, that the Shekhinah is going to return. And it didn't, by Sheni, right? So that's why the medrash is coming to explain why it didn't. And it goes into Im Chaymahi, starts with Im Chaymahi, this test. Hashem is ready to return. There's a condition. Im Chaymahi. And Knesset Yisrael were supposed to all come back, but they didn't. That's Rosh Lakish Shita, right? And then Rabbi Yitzchak, in the Psikta Rabbasid, Vav, Rabbi Yitzchak, Talmud Rabbi Yochanan, says, like Rabbi Yochanan, that you know why the Shekhinah wasn't sure in the Bayis Sheni? Because it was built by Persian, not by Bnei B'Anim Shel Shem. So not because they didn't all come back. That's not what it's about. And then the Medrash continues and says, so let's just keep track where we're up to here. The Medrash starts on the pasuk Randi v'simchi bas Tzion kinedi ba v'shachanti v'soichech, and it says Im Chaymahi, which is explaining that Klal Yisrael was tested whether like a Chaim or not. The test was whether the Lord returned. And then Rabbi Yitzchak says, no, actually returning is not as important as you think. The Shekhinah wouldn't have come back anyways. And now he continues on and talks about how great Knesset Yisrael was and how they actually were the Eishes Chayil, were the good woman who passed the test of Galus. And a very key point over here, which we'll get to in another shir, that what Rosh Lakish learns Im Chaymahi means the test of Im Chaymahi, which is, by the way, the test of Shir HaShirim. In other words, Shir HaShirim ends with this climatic question, is the woman a Chayma or not? The woman of Shir HaShirim is Knesset Yisrael, Hashem's beloved. So according to Rosh Lakish, the test of Bnei Yisrael is the whole history of Tanakh, and it ends with Galus, Bavel. And the test of Bnei Yisrael is, are they a Chayma, will they be faithful and come back to Hashem altogether? Which according to Rosh Lakish, we failed that test. According to Rabbi Yitzchak, Rabbi Yochanan is saying, yes, they should have all come back, but remember, that's not what the Shekhinah depends on. So what's Im Chayma about? What is Im Chayma about? So this is what the Medrash continues, and actually tells us that Klal Yisrael passed the test of Galus. It's a key difference. And it continues like this. It says, the Medrash says, Eishes Chayil Miyimtza is talking about Knesset Yisrael, because when we went to Galus, the Malachim said to Hashem, in Eretz Yisrael they did Avodah Zarah. So if you send them to Galus, they're for sure going to do Avodah Zarah. It's going to be worse. So Hashem said, no, look, watch. They're going to be faithful to me. They're going to be faithful to me. As much as they suffer, they're going to say good things about me. And they're going to be faithful to me. Basically, they're not going to Avodah Zarah. Lokach nemra ani chayma. Im chayma, I'm sorry. So the Medrash ends, Im chayma. Bnei Yisrael was actually a chayma in Galus because they didn't do Avodah Zarah. When did Bnei Yisrael not do Avodah Zarah in Galus? That's the story of Hanan, Mishael, and Azariah withstanding Avodah Zarah. It's not just a beautiful story. It actually indicates that Klal Yisrael withstood the test of Galus. Okay. Oh, I skipped one major point. Hashem said to the Malachi Asharis, this is why I was bringing this up. Hashem said to Malachi Asharis, who said to him, why are you sending them to Galus? It's going to be worse there. Hashem said, no, it's going to be better there. And not only is meaning they're not going to do Avodah Zarah there, and not only are they not going to do Avodah Zarah, it's actually going to be better because they're going to bring Gerim back to me. Okay? So, and then it says, they didn't do Avodah Zarah, and they're going to bring Gerim back to me, which means that we actually accomplished our purpose in Galus. The purpose of Galus was to be a chayma, to be faithful to Hashem and not to Avodah Zarah, and we actually did that already, according to Rabbi Yochanan, and we should all come back after 70 years. So the business of we're in Galus and Orta Gerim is actually all done after 70 years of Galus Bavel. The inspiration, the spreading the Torah to the world already happened. In Kam B'Koyim Al-Harach, and exactly what that means. But the point is that you can't say that the Bavlim don't belong in Eretz Yisrael because they have a purpose in Galus. So here's our question then. Why, if the Bavlim missed their opportunity to come to the Eretz, are they no longer welcome in the Eretz? The answer is very, very simple. The answer is very, very simple. Those that reject Eretz Yisrael are not able to immediately, as soon as they want to, come back and go to Eretz Yisrael. It takes time to develop the proper approach to Eretz Yisrael. Once a people, community, had the wrong approach, is a process. It takes time. And see, the idea is like this. Eretz Yisrael is not just a physical thing about living in a place. There's a certain idea about Eretz Yisrael. Because if Eretz Yisrael is at the center of Kol Terkula, clearly there's some concept to it. We spoke about it in season 1, about what Eretz Yisrael is all about. And I think we're going to get back to it later in these shurim, so we can have go Davar Shalom. But the point is that if Eretz Yisrael anchors the whole Torah, so the approach of Eretz Yisrael, what Eretz Yisrael is and what it can do for you, it obviously requires a certain mindset. It requires a certain mindset. Then, if you miss the opportunity to embrace that, you're not necessarily capable of then coming back and doing and taking it or developing it. So it takes a certain amount of time and distance till you can try it again. So to say it simply, if Eretz Yisrael has to do something for you, and you're not holding by that, and then you say, okay, I'm going to come anyways. No, don't come anyways, because then you're not going to get what Eretz Yisrael could do for you. Rather stay away a certain length of time, and then eventually you'll be ready to try again. Now, which, as we'll see, this is the Meraglim story and the Mapila, but we'll get to that soon. That's why it's a hatred to the Bavlim. The hatred to the Bavlim is that they were merachik them. They said, you guys are godless people. And the proof is like this. Rabbi Yochanan's pasuk is, Yimasayim Elikai Kilo Shamulai V'yihu Noidim Bagayim. God rejects them. My God rejects them because they didn't listen to him, and now they have to be wandering among the nations. Which means, once you don't listen to Hashem, Hashem is memayas you, and now you must wander around in the nations. You can't just come back and say, I'm ready. And like I said, where's this learned from? This is the story of the Meraglim. The Meraglim clearly did not understand what Eretz Yisrael is about. They weren't ready for it. I think we're going to speak about that specifically one day, but again, I refer to you to season 1. I don't remember which episode. There's a few in a row about Eretz Yisrael. If you want to review it, it's there. Once the Meraglim were not on the level of understanding, we're not ready to process Eretz Yisrael in the right way, they weren't welcome to try again shortly afterwards. Lo ta'alu ke'ein Hashem b'kir bechem. That's the Mapilim. Moshe said, you may not go. And the other source for this is by Avram Avinu, who said, V'ma'eda ki irashena, and then was told, Yodoya teida kager yizaracha, which the Gemara and the Medrash, this is in 9 and 10, explain that this is that the punishment of Golus corresponds to the Bama'eda. Bama'eda ki irashena means there was something lacking about the ability to live up to the blessing, to the greatness of the Aretz. And that's expressed in Bama'eda ki Rashena. And once Avram Avinu was not, and therefore his children, are not on that level to live up to the Aretz in the right way, then Yoder Tedigei Zaracha takes time. You can't just say, okay, no, I'm coming anyways. I'm going to take it, I'm going to do it. Because it's not going to do anything for you. Eretz Yisrael has to do something for you. You have to approach Eretz Yisrael in the right way. And when you have the opportunity to approach it the right way and you miss it, if you're just going to try to turn around and take it, you are certainly not going to approach it in the right way. And that's why there needs to be time. What does time do? And how does time operate on you? That is something which I hope to get to in a further share, to understand exactly what this does for you. But it's for now, we could just understand a very simple thing. Whenever there's a challenge for you to do, and it's a subtle kind of challenge, because the point is, it's not a practical thing. It's not about just taking that soul. It's being inspired by it all in a specific way. And if you're not, then clearly you have something to learn. And clearly then, if you just try to force something, as in take Eretz Yisrael without realizing what it's all about, it's not going to do for you what it's supposed to do. So basically, we see the following idea, that those who don't embrace Eretz Yisrael correctly put themselves on a path of Golus, essentially. So that's the idea. The people in Eretz Yisrael were mekanter to the Babylonian, because basically it's like it's two different nations. It's like two different nations, because the religious history of those who stayed behind in Bavel broke off. It split from those who went to Eretz Yisrael, because those who went to Eretz Yisrael with Ezra have Eretz Yisrael as part of their Judaism, let's say, and those that rejected it, according to the Eretz Yisrael, that everyone was supposed to take it, and they didn't, so they rejected it, and now they become like the Meraglim B'Shaitim, who now are not welcome in Eretz Yisrael. You're a different Ummah now. Your whole Judaism changed. Your whole relationship with Hashem changed, right? Because if Eretz Yisrael is at the center of the relationship, some have it and some don't. First of all, those who don't, it is literally like a tribal kind of hatred, because those who don't are in a certain sense less Jewish. And when I say less Jewish, I mean to say their Judaism is different, because they don't have Eretz Yisrael at the center of it, which according to the Rabbi Yochanan Rish Lakish, they were supposed to. And it's not something that can either just change whenever you want. It only could change at certain times that you could embrace Eretz Yisrael in the right way. So Mamela, the Bnei Eretz Yisrael had a hatred for the Bnei Eretz Yisrael. For the Bnei Bavel. So by the way, you should know, it's just an interesting thing. It's b'diuk the opposite of what people think. People think, Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish say the Bavliim should have come. So you see this idea that everyone's supposed to go to Eretz Yisrael. And the Chachmei Bavel, who hold they stay behind, so then there's a musig not to go to Eretz Yisrael. It's actually just the opposite. The Chachmei Bavel had a cheshbon why they stayed behind. We spoke about that already. The Torah. They don't have a shita about people not coming to Eretz Yisrael. Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish have a shita about those who should have come and didn't, don't belong coming. That's actually the one place in Chazal where we see a shita that if you're a Golus Yid, once a Golus Yid, always a Golus Yid, and you can't just turn around and say, no, now I'm taking Eretz Yisrael. In other words, Zera and the Chachmei Bavel, who held they have to be in Bavel simply because that's where the Torah is, etc. If that cheshbon changes for some reason, right, which obviously Zera held it's time for him to go to Eretz Yisrael, clearly he held that Eretz Yisrael is better for him, then you're welcome to go. There's no pagam on you, you're not a Golus person, because there was never a time that you were supposed to come to Eretz Yisrael. It was never proffered to you to Eretz Yisrael in the right way. Rabbi Yochanan Rish Lakish showed that it was offered to them, B'mei Ezra, and they rejected it. And once you reject it, you can't just, you can't, b'mitzias, whenever I say can't, or mitzias, you're not able to just turn around and embrace something the right way that you once clearly had the wrong idea about. Okay. So now we have a big question. This is what I want to ask Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish, and that Amoretz, that Rabbi Zera lesson. I want to ask them like this. Okay, you say the Bavlim have to stay behind, right? You say, well, what? See, the Torah says, the Pasuk says that you don't listen to Hashem, Hashem rejects you, and now you have to wander among the nations. For how long? How long do you want the Bavlim to stay in Bavel until you will welcome them back to Eretz Yisrael? Or put it this way, how long does it take? We said, okay, it takes time till you can do something again and try to do it right the second time, right? Right? I mean, I guess like maybe a good example, just to explain what I mean. Let's say a marriage. Someone gets married and he doesn't do it right. And then he says, okay, I'm going to do it right this time. No, you need a break. Clearly you need to change something. Has to change in you in order to do it right the second time. So maybe just to push the example. So how long do they require for the Bavliim until they believe the Bavliim could try again in the right way? So I want to show you that it's 1,000 years. 1,000 years is the time that they need to be in Golus until they can be back in Eretz Yisrael, okay? So I'm going to show you like this. There's many midrashim that show, I'm going to prove it to you that's 1,000 years. There are many midrashim that say that the length of Golus is 1,000 years. Pirkei de Belezer says, Perek Chav Ches, Perek Chav Ches. Moshlam Shel Arba Malchiyos is Yom Echad, one day of God, which is Alav Shanim. And the Medrash says further, I think it's Rabbi Elazar Baruch said, yes, the pasuk says, Nisanani Shoymema Kol Hayoim Dava. That's the end of that pasuk. Paras Reshes L'Ragloi, the one that Abba Bakana said, if you see Bavli in Eretz Yisrael, you should assume Mashiach's coming, because the pasuk says, Paras Reshes L'Ragloi, Nisanani Shoymema Kol Hayoim Dava. We'll soon see what that means in the context of the Bavli in Eretz Yisrael. But the point of the Medrash is, it says Kol Hayoim Dava. So how long are we sad for? 1 day. 1 day? It's much longer than that. 1,000 years. A day is 1,000 years, right? 6,000 years is the world. 6 Sheshim Mibrachis, 1,000 years in Hashem's eyes is like a day. So one of Hashem's days is Dava. The next raya to this, there's many places in Chazal. It says this one is in the Zohar and Shmos, Daf Yud Zayin and Aleph. The Zohar says that they're going to be in Galus until the day of the nation's Shultan is over. The day, says the Medrash. The Tanan, the Shultan is 1,000 years, and that's actually a Fuach Hayoim. And then Chia says they only have 1,000 years because the day of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is 1,000 years. He brings that pasuk too. Nisanani Shoymema Kol Hayoim Dava. 1 day and no more. Amar Rabbi Yaisi, Iyato Yishtabdun. If they are Mishabed more, it's only a day, right? 1,000 years. If it's more, Loi Apum Gzeras Malkahu. It's not based on God's decree. So God decreed, the king decreed an exile of 1,000 years. If it's more than 1,000 years, it's not Apum Gzeras Malka, Ella Adalebon Lemehedel Kible, because they don't want to return to him. So up to 1,000 years is the king's decree. After 1,000 years, it's not his decree, it's because we don't want to return to him. Okay? 1,000 years of exile. And then also we have a medrash in Eicha that says, "On Haiga Hashem Abiyom Charin Apai." So it says, "Amar Acha Yom Echad Yom Echad Hoya Charin Apai Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu." Yom Echad. Okay, 1 day, which I think means 1,000 years. But I skipped one there. Now you go to 13. This is source sheet number 13. This is in the Eicha Rabbah Psichta Chaf Aleph. Another source that it's 1,000 years. 1,000 years is the necessary time, according to the king, according to Hashem. 1,000 years is the amount of time necessary to be in Golus, and then you could, as the Zohar says, you're welcome to come back. Up to 1,000 years, Pum Gzeras Malka, based on the king's decree. More than that, it's only because we don't want to come back to. So let me show you this other medrash, one other source for 1,000 years, and this will actually prove some points that we made in the last year. The psichta, which means like the opening to Eicha Chaf Aleph, goes like this. Be'ezeh B'chalafta said, if you can cheshbon how many years Bnei Yisrael did Avodah Zarah, you're going to know when Mashiach is coming. And we have 3 psukim that support this idea that the amount of time that they served Avodah Zarah is the amount of time that they have to be suffer. Various psukim like that. Yochanan learns it out from Ya'an u'biya'an, Mida connected Mida. The amount of time you serve Avodah Zarah is the amount of time that you're going to be until Mashiach comes in Galus. Which Lakish says a different pasuk. Admaschem lenegdechem zorim oichlem oisa. The pasuk says your land lenegdechem, which literally means like in your presence, zorim oichlem oisa. Foreigners will consume it. And Rish Lakish says it means kinnegdechem zorim oichlem oisa. Corresponding to the amount of time that you were on your land, the zorim will consume your land. So now I want to just take a little detour of it and explain to you what the Medrash is saying. According to Rabbi Yochanan, he learns that from Yan Biyan, it's the amount of years that they did Avodah Zarah, they have to be in Galus. According to Rish Lakish, it's the amount of years that they were in Eretz Yisrael that Kenegdechem the Zarim will have. Now, is the amount of years they did Avodah Zarah the same the amount of years that they were in Eretz Yisrael? No. Here's what I think is happening in the Medrash. I believe that the amount of years they did Avodah Zarah is 1,000 years, and that's something that I'm not going to go into today. I think next year we'll go into that. There's that the Tkufa from Yitzias Mitzrayim until the Bittul of Yitzhak Avodah Zarah, which is actually 1,000 years exactly. So that's what I think it means the 1,000 years that they did Avodah Zarah. Okay, and then it stems perfectly with these other midrashim that say that Golus is a day. So it's saying Yanu B'yan. Yanu B'yan means if you know how long they did Avodah Zarah, you know how long the Golus is. In other places, we know that the Golus is a day, meaning 1,000 years. So yeah, 1,000 years of Avodah Zarah makes perfect sense because they left Mitzrayim with Pesel Micha, and so right away in Yitzis Mitzrayim, and they did the Egel, and then they were Mavatli Yitzis Avodah Zarah 1,000 years later, 3440. Okay, but I'll give you the sources for that another time. That's also in season 1, actually. I discussed that, but I don't remember where for now. Which episode that is. You'll have to just take that on faith for now. Then Rish Lakish says something else, right? Rish Lakish says the amount of years that you're on your land, you'll have to leave your land. Well, the amount of years they were on your land is not 1,000 years, because 40 years they were in the Midbar, right? 70 years, they were in Galus Bavel. So that's only 890 years that they were in Eretz Yisrael. Until what? Until 40 years into the Bayis Sheni, which is when the Yitzhak Avodah Zarah ended. So according to Rish Lakish, what exactly do you mean the amount of years that they were on the land? So I think it means it's like this. The amount of years that they were on land is from Yitzias Mitzrayim until the end of Bayis Rishon. It's 850. 850. And Bayis Sheni doesn't count to the amount of years that they were on their land because they were under the Shilton of the Persians. So in other words, they only had their land with autonomy for 850 years. And now they have to lose their land for 850 years. When do they lose their land? When did they lose their land? So Golus Bavel. But then they got it back in Bayis Sheni, somewhat yes, somewhat not. So I think that doesn't count as losing their land. You know when they lost their land? Maybe you say with Churban Bayis Sheni, so that's the year 70. So 850 years later gets us till 920. But Yochanan says 1,000 years. How's it to do with 1,000 years? So I'll tell you very simple. 1,000 years of Galus is the year 1,000. It takes us to the year 1,070, the end of the 11th century. That's for 1,000 years of doing Avodah Zarah. For 850 years of being in your land and sinning, you have to be off your land for 850 years. They weren't off their land with the Churban Bayis Sheni. You know when they were off their land? I want to say when the Tkufa of Bayis Sheni came to an end. The Tkufa of living in Eretz Yisrael, which I told you last year, was when Rav came to Bavel. That's in the year 219, 150 years after Bayis Sheni. So that the 850 years of Rish Lakish start in the year 219, 220. This is obviously not mamish exact. Bringing the 850 years of Rish Lakish, who measures it by the Eretz, to end with the 1,000 years of Rabbi Yochanan, who measures it by the years of serving Avodah Zarah. So it all comes together. But why is this important to me? First of all, to show you that's 1,000 years, and secondly, to show you that when Rav's coming to Bavel, that's when the Tkufa of living in Eretz Yisrael comes to an end from Bayis Sheni. Al Kopanim. What are we learning today? What am I showing you? That there's a Tkufa called the time that you're not supposed to be in Eretz Yisrael. Just like Avraham Avinu was told. When he said Bama Eida, I was told, Abba Me'ashana, Daravi'i. And just like the Meraglim were told, Abba Shana, you're not allowed to be there for a certain amount of time once you reject it. So too, once we didn't come back in the right time, so the Babylon, there's a Tkufa that we're not supposed to come back, and that is 1,000 years. More than that is not upon Gzeres Malka. It's in Haflo Fel. The Zohar says Hashem's not decreeing. If it's more than that, it's because we don't want to come back. So, and this is what I think the Medrash is saying. Remember we said like this. The Medrash says that if you see the Bavlim in Eretz, you should hope for the footsteps of Mashiach, because the pasuk says Paras Reshes L'Ragla. What's the drasha? The drasha is like this. Remember the pasuk goes as follows: Paras Reshes L'Ragloi, Nisanani Shemema, Kol Hayom Dava. Kol Hayom Dava, 1,000 years, right? Paras Reshes L'Ragloi means he's laid a trap for me. What that's telling you is that going to Galus is a trap. What's a trap mean? A trap means something which once you step into, you can't step out of it. So Paras Reshes L'Ragloi, the Bavliim were trapped in Galus. They weren't able to come back as soon as they wanted to. They had an opportunity. Once they missed the opportunity, they were stuck in Galus. Till when? So now we have a theory. So Mela what? So Mela is saying, once they come back to that soul, you know that the day is over. You know that Mashiach is coming. Now, so what does that do for us? So what that gives us is a theory of understanding that the objection to the Bavliim was that once they didn't embrace Eretz Yisrael when they could have or when they should have, they now require 1,000 years of being re-educated, let's say, or some sort of distance, which we'll have to explore further. But again, so here we do have a source, the only source, of this concept that we can sometimes figure out when we don't belong in Eretz Yisrael. If we rejected it, then we don't belong there. So what I want to get to next year, that's all for today. I wanted to analyze that Gemara well and show you how this objection to the Babylon returning has a certain zman. Zman is 1,000 years. That's our pum gzeros malka. More than that is not. The next year we have to understand like this: does this actually serve as a new yesod, a new way to figure out when we belong in Eretz Yisrael and when not? Can we apply this? Like, can we say, well, can we understand the Gemara? What exactly about rejecting Eretz Yisrael means that we should be out of it? In other words, why were the Meraglim told you can't go in? Why was Avinu told you can't go in? Why the Babylonian then told that they shouldn't come in? And could we learn something from that? Can we understand it such that we can learn something from it? Could we apply it today? Is this a halachic matter? I mean, the Rabban holds the mitzvah live in Eretz Yisrael. How do you have such kind of cheshbonos? Does this, or is this connected in any way to the Shalosh Shavuos, and which seems to be a whole different consideration? Here we have this idea that, oh, you don't belong in Eretz Yisrael spiritually, holding by it. Is it somehow connected to Shalosh Shavuos? And of course, the most important question is, what does that mean for us today? What can we take from that to conclude to Bismaneh? That's all for now.